Good afternoon. I'm Albert Carnesale, the Dean of the John F. Kennedy School of Government and Provost of Harvard University. Welcome to all of you. As I look around this room at the many faces of Harvard students, Kennedy School students, many of whom drawn to public service, it reminds me of a movie. It's the wonderful movie, The Way We Were. You may recall this was about an intense and idealistic college activist played by Barbra Streisand. And at one point early in the film, an exasperated young man, played by Robert Redford, says, "You just push and push. You never let up." And Ms. Streisand's character responds, "If I push too hard, it's because I want things to be better." Those are the words of the character in a film. This evening, we'll hear from an extraordinary citizen who is similarly motivated. Our guest is an American artist of enormous gifts and force, whose work and commitment have something to offer all of us, students, faculty, citizens. And she, like the character she portrayed, wants things to be better. Barbra Streisand is a mother, an actress, a singer, a screenwriter, a director, a producer, a political activist, a businesswoman, and a philanthropist. She has produced, and fortunately for us, she continues to produce, an important and enduring body of work on stage, television, film, and recordings. She's made an indelible, magical mark on our cultural landscape. Most of all, I enjoy her music. I agree with Stephen Holden, who wrote in the New York Times, and I quote, "Barbra Streisand, like Frank Sinatra, Billie Holiday, Ray Charles, and perhaps 2 or 3 others, has the mysterious ability to personify the fullness of human experience when she sings," close quote. And her contribution to the fullness of human experience goes beyond her art. She has a deep and abiding love of politics and a commitment to public affairs. She sang for Presidents John Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson. She worked for Eugene McCarthy and George McGovern. She was a major contributor to the emergency campaign for Israel after the Six-Day War. She raised money for Daniel Ellsberg's defense, which earned her a place on President Nixon's enemies list. It appears to be the honor of which she is most proud. Inspired by the Chernobyl disaster in 1986, Ms. Streisand began speaking out on political issues. She helped build the Hollywood Women's Political Committee into a major national political force. And it was for political reasons that she returned to the stage to perform. At that time, she said, quote, "I feel I must sing again to raise money so that we send people to Washington who will solve problems, not create them," close quote. Indeed, she raises and donates millions of dollars to causes that she believes in. She's established the Streisand Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to civil liberties, disarmament, and environmental concerns. She's made major contributions to Rebuild LA, to the Environmental Defense Fund.
You've heard of Spilky?
And to AIDS research and care. Make fun of that one. She sang at President Clinton's inauguration, and she established the Virginia Clinton Kelly Breast Cancer Research and Education Fund. And she's very shy. And she continues this work, often in the face of public skepticism and media criticism. But we should keep in mind the exchange from The Way We Were. You just push, and you never let up. Our guest does All of this because she wants things to be better. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ms. Barbra Streisand.
I've stood up and performed in front of thousands of people, but let me tell you, this is much more frightening. Believe me. Maybe because this is the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, and I'm neither a politician nor a professor. As a matter of fact, I like to think of myself as a perpetual student. Perhaps some of my anxiety has to do with the fact that I've been told that a future president of the United States might very well be in this audience. And if that's true, I'm sure she will be the one to ask me the toughest questions. I'm saying that because I had a wonderful lunch with some of the students here yesterday, and their knowledge and their enthusiasm, their optimism was truly inspiring. I'm very honored to be invited here. This invitation has a special meaning for me because it involves my convictions and not just my career. The subject of my talk is the artist as citizen. I guess I can call myself an artist, although after 30 years, the word still feels a bit pretentious. But I am first and foremost a citizen, a tax-paying, voting, concerned American citizen who happens to have opinions, a lot of them, which seems to bother some people. So I'm going to try to say something about those two roles. This is an important moment to deal with this subject because so much of what the artist needs to flourish and survive is at risk now. When I was asked to speak here a year ago, I was much more optimistic. We had 7 women in the Senate, bringing the hope of full representation for more than half the population. And we had a president who judged our ethnic, cultural, and artistic diversity as a source of strength rather than weakness. And then came the election of 1994, and suddenly the progress of the recent past seemed threatened by those who hunger for the good old days when women and minorities knew their place. In this resurgent reactionary mood, artists derided as the cultural elite are convenient objects of scorn. And those institutions which have given Americans access to artistic works, such as the National Endowment for the Arts and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, are in danger of being abolished. And I'm telling you, this is much more frightening than 12,000 people, because I respect you so much. From my point of view, this is part of the profound conflict between those who would widen freedom and those who would narrow it, between those who defend tolerance and those who view it as a threat. All great civilizations have supported the arts. However, the new Speaker of the House, citing the need to balance the budget, insists that the arts programs be the first to go. But the government's contribution to the NEA and PBS is actually quite meager. To put it in perspective, the entire NEA, the entire budget of the NEA, is equal to 1 F-22 fighter jet, a plane that some experts say may not even be necessary. And the Pentagon is planning to build 442 of them. One less plane, we've got the whole arts budget. $72 billion for those planes. Now that's real money. On the other hand, PBS costs each taxpayer less than $1 a year, and National Public Radio cost them 29 cents. So maybe it's not about balancing the budget. Maybe it's about shutting the minds and mouths of artists who might have something thought-provoking to say. William Bennett, in calling recently for the elimination of the arts agencies, charged that they were corrupt for supporting artists whose work undermines, quote, mainstream American values. Well, art does not exist only to entertain, but also to challenge one to think, to provoke, even to disturb in a constant search for the truth. And to deny artists, or any of us for that matter, free expression and free thought, or worse, to force us to conform to some rigid notion of mainstream American values, is to weaken the very foundation of our democracy. The far right is waging a war for the soul of America by making art a partisan issue, and by trying to cut arts programs which bring culture, education, and joy to the lives of ordinary Americans. They are hurting the very people they claim to represent. By the way, I also find it ironic that Newt Gingrich said that the NEA and PBS are protected by a bunch of rich, upper-class people. Isn't it a little hypocritical to lobby for tax cuts for these same rich, upper-class people, but resent them when they try to protect the arts? The persistent drumbeat of cynicism on the talk shows and in the new Congress reeks of disrespect for the arts and artists. But what else is new? Even Plato said that artists were nothing but troublemakers. And he wanted to ban them from his perfect republic. In Victorian times, there were signs requiring actors and dogs to eat in the kitchen. And as recently as last year, artists who have spoken out politically have been derided as airheads, bubbleheads, and nitwits. And this is not just by someone like Rush Limbaugh, who has called people in my industry the spaced-out Hollywood left. This is also the rhetoric of respectable publications. For example, the editor of the New Republic wrote of actors, in general, quote, in general they are an excruciating bunch of egomaniacs. They have little to say for themselves, and their politics are uniformly idiotic, end quote. To me, this is all about jealousy. The first line of his article actually said, "I wanted to be an actor as a kid." He specifically singled out Paul Newman, Whoopi Goldberg, and Tom Hanks as subjects for his wrath after last year's Academy Awards. What is the sin? Is the sin caring about your country? Why should the actor give up his role as citizen just because he's in show business? For his role in the movie Philadelphia, Tom Hanks had to learn quite a bit about being a gay man with AIDS. Should he have remained silent on this issue? For 30 years, Paul Newman has been an outspoken defender of civil liberties and a major philanthropist. Would it be better if he just made money and played golf? Should Whoopi Goldberg retreat into her home and not do anything for the homeless? Or is Robert Redford a bubblehead because he knows more about the environment than most members of Congress? I mean, imagine talking about any leaders of any other group in our society, that way. I mean, say leaders of the steelworkers union, agribusiness, or chief executives of the automobile industry. Imagine having this kind of contempt for an industry that is second only to aerospace in export earnings abroad. According to Business Week, Americans spent $340 billion on entertainment in 1993. Maybe policymakers could learn something from an industry that makes billions while the government owes trillions. The presumption is that people in my industry are too insulated, too free-thinking, too subversive. One can almost hear the question, are you now or have you ever been a member of the Screen Actors Guild? Never mind that the former president of our guild did become president of the United States. You see, the Hollywood smear only seems to apply to liberals. With no special interest and serving no personal or financial agenda, artists make moral commitments to many issues that plague our society. And indeed, this participation often makes our artists vulnerable professionally. They take the risk of offending part of their audience or their government. As the record of the Hollywood blacklist demonstrates, they can even pay the price of serving time in jail, having their works banned, or being prevented from practicing their craft. Ironically, contempt for the artist as citizen is often expressed by those most eager to exploit the celebrity of the entertainer. Both journalists and politicians feed off the celebrity status of the successful artist. We can attract a crowd and raise astounding amounts of money for politicians and make good copy for the journalists, which is precisely why we are courted and resented by both. I recall various leading newspapers and magazines trying to entice Hollywood celebrities to join their tables at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, only to trash them afterwards. You can just hear them thinking, you make money, you're famous, you have to have political opinions too. But we as people are more than what we do. As performers, professors, or plumbers, we also should be participants in the larger life of society. In the old days of the dominant movie studios, an artist wasn't allowed to express political opinions. But with the breakup of the studio system, creative people did gain independence. And with the rise of the women's, environmental, and gay rights movements, there has been an increase in artists who support liberal causes. Why is that? Well, most artists turn up on the humanist, compassionate side of public debate because this is consistent with the work we do. The basic task of the artist is to explore the human condition. And in order to do what we do well, the writer, the director, the actor, has to inhabit other people's psyches, understand other people's problems. We have to walk in other people's shoes, live in other people's skins. And this does tend to make us more sympathetic to politics that are more tolerant. In our work, in our preparation, in our research, we are continuously trying to educate ourselves. And with learning comes compassion. Education is the enemy of bigotry and hate. It's hard to hate someone you truly understand. Our participation in politics is a natural outgrowth of what we do. And it can and should be a responsible use of celebrity, since we do have the ability to raise issues, reach people, and influence opinion. As with Charlton Heston, lobbying against gun control, and thank God for the NEA, we do have a greater responsibility to be informed. I'm not here to defend everything that comes out of the entertainment industry. A lot of junk is produced, gratuitously violent, sexist, exploitive, and debasing of the human spirit. I don't like it and I won't defend it. This is a profit-driven industry that produces the best and the worst in its attempt to find a market. If you notice, the far right rarely attacks the violent movies. In fact, their candidates campaign alongside some of the major practitioners of this so-called art form. What disturbs them is often the best work of the mass media. They have attacked programming, beginning with All in the Family, because it dealt with the controversial issues of racism and sexism. They attacked Murphy Brown, which represents a thoughtful attempt to deal with the reality that Americans now lead lives which, for better or for worse, are very different than the lives of Ozzie and Harriet. Art is the signature of a generation. Artists have a way of defining the times. Marian Anderson, singing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial because as a black woman she was forbidden to sing at Constitution Hall, forced Americans to confront the outrageousness of segregation. Art can illuminate, enlighten, inspire. Art finds a way to be constructive. It becomes heat in cold places. It becomes light in dark places. When there was chaos in the 60s, Bob Dylan said it was like blowing in the wind. During the riots of the 60s, when people tried to explain the inexplicable, Aretha Franklin sang simply what was being asked for, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. And then there are the movies that spoke for their times. It's the movie version of John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath brought the sad reality of the Depression home to those who wanted to ignore it. In the 1940s, a movie called Gentleman's Agreement raised the issue of anti-Semitism in America. In the Heat of the Night was named Best Picture of 1967 and is remembered for its unsparing look at the issue of race. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington focused on buying votes and favors, a problem we still haven't solved. A generation ago, Inherit the Wind took on the Scopes trial and the subordination of science to the narrow religious view, one narrow religious view. And the movie is powerfully relevant today in light of the Christian Coalition's efforts to reintroduce creationism into the public school curriculum. Just last year, we saw a motion picture called Schindler's List bring the subject of the Holocaust to millions of people around the world. Steven Spielberg rescued it from fading newsreels and recast it in black and white film, which makes it vivid and real and, yes, undeniable. Movie makers can be late to a subject or even afraid, but often they are brave and ahead of their time. Artists were criticized for their involvement in the civil rights struggle and their early opposition to the Vietnam War. In those cases, at least, I would suggest that the painters and performers were wiser than most pundits and politicians. I'm not suggesting that actors run the country. We've already tried that. But I am suggesting, for example, that on the issue of AIDS, I would rather have America listen to Elizabeth Taylor, who had the courage to sponsor the first major fundraiser against this dreaded disease, than to Jesse Helms, who has consistently fought legislation that would fund AIDS research. Our role as artists is more controversial now because there are those claiming the absolute authority of religion who detest much of our work as well as most of our politics. And instead of rationally debating subjects like abortion or gay rights, they condemn as immoral those who favor choice and tolerance. They disown their own dark side and magnify everyone else's until at the extreme, doctors are murdered in the name of protecting life. And I wonder, who is this God they invoke, who is so petty and mean? Is God really against gun control and food stamps for poor children? I believe that all people need spiritual values in their lives, but we can't reduce the quest for eternal meaning to a right-wing political agenda. What is dangerous about the far right is not that it takes religion seriously, most of us do, but rather that it condemns all other spiritual choices, the Buddhist, the Jew, the Muslim, and many others who consider themselves to be good Christians. The wall of separation between church and state is needed precisely because religion, like art, is too important a part of the human experience to be choked by the hands of censors. Now, artists have long felt the stranglehold of censorship by officially established religions. A 16th century pope ordered loincloths painted on the figures in Michelangelo's Last Judgment. Hi, Chris. How am I doing, okay? 19th century clerics damned Walt Whitman. Tolstoy was viewed as a heretic, and today Islamic extremists sanctioned by governments are still hunting down Salman Rushdie. It's interesting that Americans applaud artists in other parts of the world for speaking out, in China, for example. It's very often the artist who gives a voice to the voiceless by speaking up when no one else will. The playwright Václav Havel went to jail because of that, and now he's president of his country. I know that, that I can speak more eloquently through my work than through any speech I might give. Speeches make me very nervous, as you can see. So as an artist, I've chosen to make films about subjects and social issues that I care about, whether it's dealing with the inequality of women in Yentl, or producing a film about Colonel Greta Kammermeyer, who was discharged from the army for telling the truth about her sexuality. Her story reminded me of a line from George Bernard's play, St. Joan, that said, "He who tells too much truth shall surely be hanged." And hopefully we won't be hanged for trying to dispel some of the myths about gays and lesbians next week when the film airs on network TV. Monday night. I promised myself I wouldn't get too partisan here. I'm sorry. Sorry, Chris. But some of my best customers are Republicans, you know. And when I sang in Washington, D.C., I asked for a show of party allegiance, you know, and a majority turned out to be Republicans. I should have known who else could afford the ticket prices, you know. Fortunately, there are reasonable Republicans. But I am worried about the direction in which the new Congress now seeks to take the country. I'm worried about the name-calling, the stereotypical labeling. I want to believe that these people have good intentions, but I think it was dangerous when Newt Gingrich developed a strategy in the last campaign of pitting President Clinton against so-called normal Americans. And just last week, the speaker attacked again when he said, and I quote, "I fully expect Hollywood to have almost no concept of either normal American behavior in terms of healthy families, healthy structure, religious institutions, and conservative politics and free enterprise." End quote. Now, this from a politician who holds up a Hollywood movie, Boys Town, as his answer for welfare reform? How can he say that Hollywood doesn't know anything about free enterprise? And why just this past Wednesday was he trying to round up Hollywood celebrities to promote his agenda? But most of all, I deeply resent the notion that one politician or political party owns the franchise on family values, personal responsibility, traditional values, and religion. We are all normal Americans, even with our problems and complexities, including people in my community. We were not born in movie studios. We come from every part of this country, and most of us are self-made. We've worked hard to get where we are. We don't forget where we come from, where we came from even, whether it's Iowa, Cincinnati, or Brooklyn. And this notion of normal Americans has a horrible historical echo. It presupposes that there are abnormal Americans who are responsible for all that is wrong. And the new scapegoats are members of what Gingrich calls the counterculture McGoverniks. Now, I did a concert for George McGovern. Oh. I get all riled up, you know, and makes me a little crazy. I did a concert in 1972 for McGovern, and I still think he would have made a better president than Richard Nixon, okay? I'm disappointed that I've read so little in defense of McGovern. Was McGovern countercultural? This son of a Republican Methodist minister has been married to the same woman for 51 years, flew 35 combat missions in World War II. Isn't it odd that his patriotism be disputed by a person who never served in the military and whose own family history can hardly be called exemplary? But then again, no one should have to conform to some mythical concept of the ideal family, not even Mr. Gingrich. I must admit that that I'm confused by this man's thinking, okay? He proposes taking children away from poor mothers and placing them in orphanages. If that's an example of mainstream culture, let me say I'm happy to be a member of the counterculture, okay? I'm also very proud to be a liberal. Why is that so terrible these days? The liberals were liberators. They fought slavery, fought for women to have the right to vote, fought against Hitler, Stalin, fought to end segregation, fought to end apartheid. And thanks to liberals, we have Social Security, public education, consumer and environmental protection, Medicare, Medicaid, the minimum wage law, unemployment compensation. Liberals put an end to child labor. They even gave us the 5-day work week. What's to be ashamed of? Such a record should be worn as a badge of honor. Liberals have also always believed in public support for the arts. At the height of the Depression, Franklin Delano Roosevelt created the Works Progress Administration, which helped struggling artists. Willem de Kooning, Jackson Pollock, John Cage were among those who benefited from the support of the WPA. Art was a way out for me. See, I represent a generation of kids who happened to benefit from government support of the arts in public schools. I was a member of the choral club at Erasmus Hall High School. Oh, some people from there. And sadly, this current generation of young people does not have the same opportunities. How can we accept a situation in which there are no longer orchestras, choruses, libraries, or art classes to nourish our children? We need more support for the arts, not less. I'm glad you agree. Particularly to make this rich world available to young people whose vision is choked by a stark reality. How many children who have no other outlet in their lives for their grief have found solace in an instrument to play or a canvas to paint on? When you take into consideration the development of the human heart, soul, and imagination, don't the arts take on just as much importance as math or science? What can I say? God bless you. I have opinions. No one has to agree. I just like being involved. And after many years of self-scrutiny, I've realized that the most satisfying feelings come from things outside myself. And I believe that people from any walk of life, when they stand up for their convictions, can do almost anything: stop wars, end injustices, and even defeat entrenched powers. As the difference between the elections of 1992 and 1994 shows, the outcome is not preordained. Progress, whatever your definition of it, is not inevitable. I thought this current administration was doing a hell of a good job. Reducing the deficit by $700 billion, creating 6 million jobs, downsizing government, and passing a significant amount of important legislation. I'm not a policy wonk, but that's the way I see it. Most artists are not experts, but all of us are something more. As President Carter said in 1980, "In a few days, I will lay down my official responsibilities in this office to take up once more the only title in our democracy superior to that of president, the title of citizen." We also need to keep in mind some words spoken by the man for whom this school of government is named. President Kennedy said, He valued so much what artists could give because, quote, he knew the midnight as well as the high noon and understood the ordeal as well as the triumph of the human spirit. He also said, in serving his vision of the truth, the artist best serves his nation. By the way, President Kennedy was the first to suggest the creation of the National Endowment for the Arts. And well aware that art can be controversial, he concluded, the artist must often sail against the currents of his time, and this is not a popular role. But in 1995, I continue to believe it is an indispensable one. That artists, especially those who have had success and won popularity in their work, not only have the right, but the responsibility to risk the unpopularity of being committed and active. We receive so much from our country. We can and should give something back. So until women are treated equally with men, until gays and minorities are not discriminated against, and until children have their full rights, artists must continue to speak out. I will be one of them. Sorry, Rush, Newt, Jesse, but the artist as citizen is here to stay.
We'll resume with questions in just a couple of minutes. So take a break and talk to the people next to you. Unless you'd like to hear me sing.
So what do you want to know? What do you want to know?
Please, when we recognize you, identify yourself, make sure it's a question, and brief, please. So right here.
Hi, my name is Christopher Garcia. I'm a member of the Student Advisory Committee here at the IOP, and I'd like to welcome you again.
Chris.
December 1st, 1993, Newt Gingrich spoke from that very podium.
You gave me a Republican as the first person here to ask me a question?
And House Speaker Gingrich at that time said that he wanted to share with us what it is that he thinks is essential to the model of leadership in the information age and the key to running a democracy. And he said that it's 4 words, and they're a process that follow in sequence. The first is listen, then learn, then help, and then lead. And in listening to you speak here tonight, I was kind of curious to wonder why the posture you've assumed and why the posture the cultural elite has assumed has been so defensive, and why it isn't.
Chris, watch it, Chris.
And why.
No, let me tell you something. I had a ball with with Christopher yesterday because he was one of the students I had lunch with. And we started this wonderful debate, and I said to you I could talk to you for hours because I'm really curious to know why you are a Republican. And we shall have this debate.
But I'm curious to know why the posture is defensive and rather not more chastened, since it would seem to me the recent election has demonstrated that perhaps the cultural elite has stopped listening.
Wait a minute, I resent you calling us the cultural elite.
Okay, the entertainment industry.
What I resent is that we are being called names. Why do that?
Okay, we'll avoid...
It's the politics of divisiveness rather than inclusiveness. So
we'll avoid names then. But simply the question...
Is there a question?
The question
is why...
Come out fighting. I like this, yeah.
The question is, isn't the recent election an indication that certain people, whether they be liberals or the cultural elite or Barbra Streisand, have stopped listening to a certain segment of society?
We got it.
By the way, I wish I could be more magnanimous, transcend all the complaints. I would like to always take the high road. And I think it's about having the debate, you know, having an open dialogue and finding a common ground with whatever party we're talking about. Because it's really about compassion, acceptance, tolerance, love, all the good things in life, you know. So this is a very complicated question you're asking, and I think we should make a date and have lunch again and discuss it.
My name is Ana Marie Huerta, and I'm a senior at the college. I'm an associate here at the Institute of Politics. My question to you is, you say you're proud to be to be called a liberal because it was the liberals who brought us programs such as public education, Medicaid, and Medicare. I think today's liberals would acknowledge the fact that these programs need reforming. Medicaid and Medicare have exorbitant costs. Our public schools don't rank close to those in other industrial countries. What can you do in your role as citizen, as artist, or recommend to us that we do as these reforms take place to ensure that these programs are kept in our society and are better than before?
Vote for the Democrats next time. In other words, the Republicans are talking about cutting funding for Head Start, loans to students, national service, Medicare, Medicaid, and all these things. So, what I said, vote for us next time.
Okay, I think we have a microphone up there.
Hi, my name is Lisa Korn. I'm a second year at Harvard Medical School, and I'm very concerned about the future of healthcare in terms I see trends that may suggest less healthcare for poor people, still perpetuating discrimination against women and minorities. And it seems that the Republicans are interested in less legislation about healthcare reform. And I was wondering if you can comment on that, and if it seems that changes in healthcare are going to be turned back to the citizens and the businesses. What can we do to ensure that more people get good healthcare?
I'm glad you didn't ask me a question about unfunded mandates. I am not an expert on healthcare. I know on my instinct. I operate a lot from my instinct. And when I saw and heard about the thick document that was called healthcare, I thought, oh my God, I don't understand this. I would think, I'm like most people, we don't understand this. And that's why it was called, a metaphor for big government. So I cannot answer that question, okay?
Can you comment on your general opinion about what you would like to see in healthcare reform?
I like the single-payer system myself. Uncomplicated. Take government out completely, I mean, take the insurance, the middleman out completely.
Thank you.
Melissa Liazos. I'm a junior at Harvard College, and I know you talked a lot about women's issues in your speech, and I wanted to ask you, as a woman in Hollywood, which is an industry that I think, like a lot of others, has very few women in its highest positions, if you've seen yourself as a role model for other women or a role model for other women in society struggling to succeed.
Well, I mean, I don't like to tout my own horn. What I can do is, and sometimes it happens without a lot of preconceiving. But in terms of the artist being a responsible citizen or whatever, or using their celebrity for a good cause, I remember when I gave a speech at the APLA, AIDS Project Los Angeles, and Amendment 2 had just been passed in Colorado, which discriminated against gays in housing and employment. And I happened to say in my speech that even though this was a beautiful state, the moral climate was unacceptable, and we should not play. If we are asked to, we should not play where they discriminate. And the next day there was a boycott in the state of Colorado. So, you know, I thought, oh my God, what did I do? I hope this is the right thing. I said this without talking to the heads of the gay community. It turned out all, you know, to be the right thing. And but I'm saying you have to be very responsible as a celebrity, because that's what can happen. So to answer your question about being a role model, I can't really say about that. I mean, if people find me to be a role model, great. And if not, I mean, you know, it's hard for me to answer that question. Thank you.
Up here.
Hi, my name is Amy Sandler. I'm a first-year student at the business school. You spoke a lot about opposition to some of the more progressive themes inside of Washington. I wonder if you could touch on opposition inside of Hollywood. For instance, the TV film that you mentioned, which I believe airs Monday night on NBC. Would that have been produced and able to air on network television without the names Barbra Streisand and Glenn Close behind it?
Well, did you read the New York Times yesterday?
Yeah.
And the Wall Street Journal today? That's what they're about. I
Right.
mean, again, that's a wonderful part of being famous, that an issue like that might not ever see the light of day, because it's a precarious subject, you know, does come to fruition and is going to be seen by millions of people all across the world. And I think, yeah, we were responsible for the initiation. In other words, that's what I could do, you know, initiate the project. Find the subject totally unjust, you know, her case unjust, want to do something about it, and because of something I heard was a Q report or something, it tells you about your, I don't even know about a Q letter, it tells you, forget what I'm trying to say. That if one does have influence, you know, it could be used to good advantage. So I think the answer is yes.
My name is Stacy Wolf. I just want to tell you, I know you've told us that you're very nervous tonight, but we've all witnessed here tonight you're an outstanding public speaker. And since you're such a passionate, engaging public speaker, you're wealthy, you're intelligent, you're enormously popular.
You got a guy for me?
Would you please consider running for public office in '96?
Oh, gosh, no. You see, you can't confuse political passion with political ambition. I'm passionate about certain issues, but I think I can be much more effective doing what I do, which is, you know, making a film about Colonel Kammermeyer, or making a film about everybody's right to love in the normal heart, making a film like Yentl, or even about dysfunctional families and how the truth can set you free as a theme of transformation, acceptance in The Prince of Tides, which is on Sunday night. So, you know, instead of, politicians have a hard job. They have to hit people over the head, you know, to try to convince them of something. But through art, what a wonderful way to reach people through a story, or, you know, something that is entertaining and emotional. I mean, what's so great about art is that, or making movies or singing a song, is that it frees people's emotions. Sometimes we're blocked, you know, we can't feel. But you watch a movie, identify with a character, and you can laugh, you can cry, you can feel a sense of loss for yourself, for others, and it releases you. You know, I think that's what art allows to happen.
But I'd still like to see you as Senator Streisand.
Now, you see, that's a funny thing about the press, okay? Somebody heard me give that APLA speech, I think, and said, I bet she should run for office. That's what they told me. I said, no, you don't understand. It has nothing to do with running for office. And the New York Post calls me and says, are you running for office? I said, absolutely not. Front page of the paper the next day, Senator Streisand.
Thank you.
Let's see, right up here.
So much for the truth.
Hi, my name is Valerie Landau Serrano, and I'm with the Graduate School of Education.
Oh,
Hi. And many of us at the Ed School are trying to improve arts and education through art. And I was just wondering if you had any words of advice for us working down on the grassroots level. Since we see you not as a cultural elite, but as a cultural leader.
thank you. I mean, there's a way to help from a private point of view. When I did my concert tour, every city I went to, I tried to donate money to a certain school and buy them instruments and art supplies and so forth. That's not good enough, really. I think this is the job of government, you know? I think people say we want less government, but I don't think that's really true. I think we want a more efficient government, a better government, not necessarily less government. Because I think it's the government's job to recognize the importance of art for children and put those programs, you know, into the schools. So you have to elect the right leaders again. You have to write your congressmen, senators, and so forth, and vote.
Hi, Barbara. My name is Lisa Bensfeld, and I'm a graduate student here. And I was just wondering, you spoke on a lot of different political issues. You touched upon a lot of different things, and I was just trying to grasp at I was wondering if you could comment on the disabled community, because as the ADA has passed in 1990 by President Bush, I was just wondering what you felt about the disabled community around this country. And if you have any comments or suggestions or any concerns that might help us, our community grow and flourish, that would be greatly appreciated.
Well, I think every one of us has a contribution to make to society. And so I think that, again, the government should help, you know, to make everybody fulfill their full potential as human beings.
Do you see any government action that the disabled community could take so that we could become more a part of able-bodied society? Because right now we are the largest minority group in the society, and unfortunately the community does not recognize us or see us.
I'm sorry about that, and I really don't know enough about the subject to comment. I just really think that, you know, people have to be involved in the issues of the day. I read something about Judge Brandeis said that. Every citizen, again, should be part of the political process in their country. And I think you have to work at it. You know, every person has a voice, every person has a vote, and every person has power if they claim it. And so I think you have to help organize your own community and do what you can to elect the right leaders that are going to help you.
Thank you. You're a very elegant, sweet speaker. Thank you.
Hello, Ms. Streisand. My name is Eduardo Perez, and one of the issues that you spoke of in your speech today, and that I'm also concerned about, is the issue of AIDS as it affects someone in my immediate family. I want to know your opinion on what you think the government role should be, and where do you think the government is headed in this important issue that's affecting our society today?
I think it's all about money for research, and also trying to destroy, you know, some of the homophobic attitudes in this country. But I think it's money, you know. The government has to spend money. And sometimes it's an issue that wants to be swept under the table, like during the Reagan administration when he didn't even say the word AIDS for 7 out of the 8 years of his presidency. So you have to shine the light on these issues and give money, have the government support the research for AIDS.
Thank you.
Let's go back upstairs.
I think they're over there first. I think they've been waiting
Yeah.
longer.
Where is it?
Hi, my name's Sarah Rose. I'm a junior in the English department. And you talked about the artist's role as provoking and critiquing society. When someone's as mainstream as you are, can you please tell me how it's possible to provoke a society of which you're so much a part of the cultural consciousness?
I didn't know I was so mainstream.
$350 a ticket.
That makes it, yeah, right. I don't think that makes it mainstream. That is funny, when I was a young performer and I was kind of a cult figure. My records only sold in the big cities, New York, LA, Chicago, San Francisco. When it started to go wider, the sales were wider, I was disappointed, tell you the truth. So I can't really, I don't think of my own career and myself as mainstream, not mainstream. I think that's
Does it become a conflict for the artist?
in what way? I rely on my own instinct, my imagination, and my personal sense of truth. So I don't know what you really mean.
Just that rather than being on the outside looking in and critiquing, you're on the inside. And it's not a problem at all? Or,
No.
you support...
Hello, Ms. Streisand. I enjoyed your talk very much. My name is David Abrams. I'm a freshman at the college this year. I want to ask you, your talk was artist as a citizen, and you concentrated mostly on yourself as an American citizen. I was wondering how you see yourself maybe as a world citizen, and what issues around the world you think are important and that maybe you're involved in at all.
I can't be involved in every subject. I'm not president of the United States. He has to be involved in everything, I suppose. I don't know that much about Bosnia, I'm glad what happened in Haiti happened. I'm glad what's happening in Ireland. It's a complicated question. I would rather not comment on that.
Right here.
How many? You told me 5 questions. It's already 8 or 9.
Hi, Barbara. My name is Dan Lee. I'm a student in the Divinity School getting a Master of Divinity. And I guess it's my turn to get off of Klimt now.
For Klimt. That's very funny. Yes, it's very funny.
There are many conversations in the Divinity School about bringing religious values in the public sphere. And I'm really interested in the religious dimensions of your work. I was wondering if you could comment on the religious influences that surely include your Judaism, your reading of Joseph Campbell, those influences which inform your notions of service, which inform your activism, and which inform your art. And thank you for Yentl, by the way.
Oh, that's nice. It is ingrained in me. I went to yeshiva the first 3 years of my schooling. You know what that is, yeshiva? A Hebrew school, a religious school. Half the day was Hebrew and half the day was English. And it had a profound effect on me, and I remember sitting. My father was a teacher, by the way, and he was a religious man. And when he went to Columbia University, if he had to stay late, he would not observe the Sabbath, and he would walk home to Brooklyn. I remember sitting with my grandfather in shul davening, and all the other women were up there, but as a little girl I could sit next to him, We always had a pushki in our house, you know what that was? A charity box. And we lived in an apartment. My brother slept on a folding cot. I slept in the bed with my mother. So, yes, all these things do form you, And even though intellectually I sometimes believe in the reform kind of Judaism. I like the music and the flowers and all that. And the songs, you know. But when my son was bar mitzvahed, it was in an Orthodox temple. So, yes, you know, part of the Jewish tradition is to help other people. And Friday night, you're supposed to invite a stranger into your house and help the sick and so forth. So I think it's part of my nature, my upbringing, you know, a sense of justice and a sense of charity. And I hope it makes me a better person. Thank you.
It does.
Hi, my name's Todd Harper. I'm a first year here at the Kennedy School. It seems to me that we live in a world where there's increasingly fear and distrust in society, and that's because people perhaps have lost touch with their communities, and that the arts are a powerful way to bring people back to their community. With that in mind, my question for you is that is it appropriate for the federal role to play for federal government to play a role in funding the arts, that perhaps that might be better done by the state and local levels, by corporations, or by artists like yourself?
No, I think the government has to give the prestige and the honoring of the arts. The government has to be involved, because that even President Reagan did that. He had an arts program, an arts task force, I think, because he felt too that government must embrace the importance of the artist and arts. So you know that in like with the NEA, I mean, for every dollar that they raise, $11 comes from privatization, private funding. So what's the conflict? You get a little from the government, you get a lot from the private sector.
I guess the conflict is, at this point in time, my generation faces an increasing national debt that we're going to have to pay the price on. And it's not
Then
just...
stop building up the Defense Department.
I don't disagree with you.
Billions were spent on the B-1 bomber that is now obsolete. So there's a lot of wasteful spending, defense spending, S&L bailouts, and things like that, you know. So it's a matter of priorities. Okay.
Well, I'm afraid falls to me, despite the fact that you're not prepared to run for the Senate, and despite the fact that you come from Brooklyn rather than the Bronx, I want you to know that we are searching for a dean for the Kennedy School. And I'm sure if we ask these people, they'll be happy to have you.
Thank you so much.